You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It's Friday. It's Friday, the 29th of March, 2024. And you're listening to episode 58 of The Observing Eye, coming at you live from the computer hell cabin. Every week, we get psychological, philosophical, and all manner of introspective. I'm David, and this week, we are venturing into the bleak and absurd world of Albert Camus and existentialism. Have you ever stopped to wonder why we're here? What is the point of it all? Is there some grand purpose to existence, or are we hurtling through a vast and indifferent universe with no inherent meaning? These are the kinds of profound questions that have preoccupied thinkers for centuries, and today we're going to explore a philosophical movement that grapples head-on with these very issues, and that's existentialism. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Soren Kierkegaard are often associated with existentialism, a philosophy that emphasizes individual freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning in an absurd world. But what exactly does that mean, and how does it play out in real life? Well, to answer those questions, we're going to be embarking on a philosophical adventure, guided by one of existentialism's most intriguing figures, the Algerian-born French author Albert Camus. We'll dive into his life story, exploring the events that might have shaped his unique brand of existentialism, often referred to as absurdism. Then, we're going to crack open one of his most famous works, the thought-provoking novel, The Stranger, and dissect its themes through the lens of existentialism. So get ready to confront the absurd alongside Meursault, the enigmatic protagonist of Camus' famous book. So, we've established that existentialism tackles some pretty big questions: the meaning of life, individual freedom, and navigating a world that seems indifferent to our existence. But what exactly is existentialism, and what are its core themes? Imagine, if you will, that you are standing on a vast empty beach. We're going to have a little bit of a mind exercise here. Those waves, they crash, they recede, they crash again. The wind whips through your hair. The sun beats down. There is a sense of awe, a connection to something bigger than yourself. Now, imagine looking closer and realizing that there's no lifeguard, no safety net, no preordained path laid out before you. That is the essence of existentialism. A philosophy that emphasizes the freedom and responsibility we face in an absurd universe. The word absurd is key here. Existentialists argue that the universe has no inherent meaning, no grand purpose pre-programmed for us. We are free to choose our own paths, define our own values, and create meaning in a world that ultimately doesn't care. This can be a daunting realization, a feeling of angst or anxiety that comes with the weight of this freedom. But it's not all doom and gloom. Existentialism also emphasizes authenticity. Instead of passively accepting societal norms or expectations, we are challenged to forge our own identities, to live in accordance with values that we choose for ourselves. Think of it like this. You're a blank canvas, and the brush is in your hand. You get to decide the colors, the shapes, the masterpiece that you create. It's a liberating thought, but also a terrifying one, because with this freedom comes the responsibility to make choices, to face the consequences, and ultimately, to define who you are in a world that offers no easy answers. So existentialism isn't about finding some pre-existing meaning. It's about creating meaning through your choices, your actions, and the way you engage with the world around you. It's about living authentically despite the absurdity, and embracing the freedom to carve your own path in a universe that seems indifferent. We mentioned Jean-Paul Sartre as a prominent figure in existentialism, and his ideas are particularly interesting because he took the concept of freedom to a whole new level. Sartre believed very strongly in what he called radical freedom. He believed that we are entirely free to choose our actions, our values, and even our personality. He argued that this freedom is not a gift, but a burden, because with absolute freedom comes the responsibility for everything we do and everything we are. In the words of Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. Sartre called this existence precedes essence. This means we aren't born with a predefined purpose. Instead, we define ourselves through our choices, through the way we choose to exist in the world. There's no script, no plan, no predetermined path. You're not a cup sitting on a shelf defined by your shape and function. You're more like a blob of clay. You can mold yourself into anything you want, a sculptor, a warrior, a poet. The possibilities are endless. But so is the pressure. Because with this freedom comes the responsibility to choose, and the terrifying knowledge that we are ultimately responsible for the people that we become. Sartre also emphasized the concept of bad faith. This is when we try to escape our freedoms by clinging to pre-existing labels or societal expectations. We pretend to be something we're not, to avoid the responsibility of defining ourselves. But for Sartre, the key is to embrace this freedom, to live authentically, and to define ourselves through our choices. It's a daunting task, but it's also incredibly liberating. We are the authors of our own stories, and the world is our canvas. Okay, let's get into a bit of Albert Camus, the man whose life was defined by absurdity. So Albert Camus, the author behind the iconic novel The Stranger, wasn't just a writer. He was a philosopher deeply embedded in the existentialist movement, particularly the concept of the absurd. But to understand Camus, we need to delve into his life, a story that unfolded against the backdrop of a harsh and often indifferent world. A young boy growing up in French Algeria, surrounded by the beauty of the Mediterranean, yet witnessing the brutal realities of colonialism. That boy was Albert Camus. Born in 1913, his early life was marked by poverty and loss. He lost his father at a young age and his mother, tragically, to tuberculosis. These experiences undoubtedly left their mark, fostering a sense of isolation and a questioning of the inherent fairness of the universe. Adding to this was a constant struggle with illness. Camus himself battled tuberculosis, a disease that forced him to confront his own mortality at a young age. This struggle likely contributed to his fascination with the absurdity of life, the stark contrast between the beauty and vibrancy of the world and the inevitability of death. But Camus wasn't one to simply wallow in the absurd. He saw it as a starting point, a realization that shattered illusions of inherent meaning in the universe. Imagine Sisyphus, forever condemned to roll a boulder uphill, only to watch it roll back down again. This image, explored by Camus in his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, represents the absurd, a seemingly pointless struggle. However, for Camus, the key wasn't to succumb to despair. Instead, he advocated for embracing the absurd. Think of it as a defiant act of rebellion against a universe indifferent to our struggles. By accepting the lack of inherent meaning, we free ourselves from the pressure to conform to external expectations of purpose. We are liberated to create our own meaning, to forge our own path, and to find value in the experience of living itself, even if it's ultimately fleeting. Camus' life story is a testament to this philosophy. Despite the hardships he faced, he became a prolific writer, a philosopher, and a rebel against societal norms. He found meaning in creativity, in human connection, and in the act of living authentically, even in the face of the absurd. Camus challenges us to confront the absurd, to create our own meaning, and to live with passion and purpose in a world that may not offer them readily. We'll see how these themes play out in his groundbreaking work, The Stranger. So The Stranger is not your typical beach read. It is a thought-provoking exploration of existential themes, all wrapped up within a pretty good narrative. Our protagonist is Meursault, a man whose detachment from societal norms and emotional indifference raises eyebrows from the very first page. He reacts with a startling lack of emotion to his mother's death, and on a scorching afternoon under the relentless Algerian sun, he commits a seemingly senseless act of violence, shooting a man on a beach. Now, Meursault's actions can be interpreted through the lens of existentialism. His indifference to his mother's death could be seen as a rejection of societal expectations around grief. He doesn't play the role society expects of a mourning son, because for him, the meaninglessness of life extends to death as well. The act of violence on the beach is even more complex. Some see it as a rebellion against external forces, a lashing out at a world that offers no inherent meaning. Meursault is a man suffocated by the heat, both literally and metaphorically. He acts impulsively, perhaps driven by a sense of absurdity itself, a feeling that nothing truly matters anyway. But the real meat of the story lies in Meursault's trial and subsequent awakening. Here, the absurdity truly comes to light. He's not judged for the act itself, but for his lack of remorse, his inability to conform to societal expectations of grief and emotion. This hypocrisy highlights the absurdity of societal norms and the pressure to conform, even when those norms seem meaningless in the face of the vast indifference of the universe. As Meursault awaits his execution, he experiences a moment of clarity. He finally embraces the absurd, accepting the meaninglessness of his existence and the inevitability of death. In a way, he finds a strange kind of peace in this acceptance. He rejects the comfort of religious beliefs or societal norms, choosing to face his fate with a newfound authenticity. The Stranger itself is not a story with easy answers. It's a challenging exploration of existentialism. Is Meursault a monster or a misunderstood rebel? Does embracing the absurd mean a life devoid of value or purpose? These are questions that Camus leaves us pondering. So we've looked at the complexities of The Stranger, we've explored Meursault's actions through the lens of existentialism, and we've tried to grapple with the absurdity that permeates throughout the novel. But what does it all mean? What is the enduring message that The Stranger offers us readers living in a world decades removed from its publication? Well, the first thing that I get from it is that it challenges us to question societal pressures and to embrace authenticity, even if that means going against the grain. And I don't feel that it necessarily advocates for a life that's devoid of meaning either. And this is the tricky thing with existentialism. There is a lack of purpose to it, to existence, through the lens of existentialism. But it's about us creating that purpose, creating that meaning. So while Meursault initially seems emotionally detached when hearing of his mother's death at the beginning, there are moments in the story where he experiences a connection to the beauty of the world around him, the warmth of the sun, the feeling of the sea breeze. These moments suggest that even in the face of the absurd, we can find value in the present experience, in the present moment. I feel the core message of the novel might lie in Meursault's final awakening. By accepting the absurd, the meaninglessness of life, he paradoxically finds a sense of peace. He rejects societal illusions and embraces his own mortality, living authentically in the face of an indifferent universe. But does this mean that we should all abandon hope and meaning-making? Well, not necessarily. Camus encourages us to create our own meaning, to define our own values, and to live with passion and purpose. despite the knowledge that it's all ultimately going to come to an end. We can find meaning in things like relationships, in our creativity, in the pursuit of knowledge, even if the universe itself offers none. What I love about The Stranger is that it grapples with universal questions about our place in the world. It challenges us to confront the meaninglessness, to question society, and ultimately to create purpose and meaning on our own terms. There are two questions that linger in my mind after rereading the book. And these are questions I'm going to leave you to think about. I'm not going to give you answers. Maybe you can tell me your answers. And the questions are, does embracing the absurd free us or paralyze us? And how do we create meaning in a seemingly meaningless universe? There's something for you to ponder. Now, I try to give you some practical ideas and ways you can apply the things that we discuss in these episodes. And I had a good think about this one, because what are the practical applications of a philosophy that believes that there is no purpose or meaning in the universe? Well, there are some, surprisingly. And I'm going to run through a short list of them so that you can take them away and hopefully find some use for them in your day-to-day lives. So firstly, there is the notion of facing the absurd head on. And that means that we acknowledge the inherent meaninglessness of the universe. And that doesn't have to be depressing. If we shift our perspective to look at it from a liberating perspective, we can accept that there is no preordained script. And by doing that, we can free ourselves from the pressure to conform to expectations. All of those external expectations around meaning and purpose, we can define for ourselves. Because if there's no preordained script, then we're the ones writing it. I think there's a lot to be said within The Stranger about, and existentialism in general, about living authentically. Embracing our freedom to choose our own values and define our own paths, that is a core belief, a core idea that runs through existentialism. Instead of passively accepting external expectations, we can forge our own identity, and we can live in accordance with what matters most to us by defining it ourselves. Because again, we're the authors. We're the authors of our own existence. I also think there's an element, as I mentioned, of finding beauty in the absurd. I think the very absurdity of life can be a massive source of creativity and appreciation. I think we can, if we fully engage with the present moment, we can find immense beauty in the fleeting experiences of life. I feel that recognizing the temporary nature of things intensifies the beauty of that experience, because we know it is fleeting. It is not permanent. And then we have the idea of living with passion in what could be labeled a spiteful universe. So living in spite is a concept within absurdism that encourages us to defy the absurdity with a sense of passion and rebellion. We engage with life actively. We fight for what we believe in. We refuse to be passive in the face of indifference. I'm reminded of that poem by Dylan Thomas, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." I think that sums it up perfectly, to exist with passion despite knowing that all things come to an end. I think through all of this, it's important to remember that embracing the absurd doesn't mean giving up hope. It means taking control of our own narrative. It means creating our own meaning. And it means living life to the fullest, even in a seemingly meaningless universe. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the subject of Albert Camus, The Stranger, and absurd existentialism. We've grappled with the big questions: the meaning of life, the weight of freedom, and navigating a world that seems indifferent to our existence. But hopefully, we've also come away with some valuable insights. Existentialism reminds us of our inherent freedom and responsibility to define our own meaning. Absurdism challenges us to confront the meaninglessness of the universe and embrace the liberating power of creating our own purpose. So, the next time you find yourself staring up at the night sky, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all, remember that you have the power to forge your own path in this apparently absurd universe. Embrace the freedom, define your values, and live authentically. Find beauty in the present moment. Create something meaningful with your time. And don't be afraid to defy the absurdity with passion and purpose. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on this little expedition into absurdism today. I hope it sparked some interesting questions and that it's inspired you to explore the world around you and your place within it with a fresh perspective. As always, if anything in this episode has resonated with you in any way, then I would love to hear from you. You can share your stories via Substack at theobservingeye.com or on social media. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theobservingeye and on TikTok and Instagram with the handle @theobservingeye as well. If you listened to last week's episode, you will have heard the absolute butchering I did of this bit, and I've almost got it right, apart from hurdle rather than handle. So the handle @theobservingeye as well. As always, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep living a life that matters, even in the face of the absurd. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope it's been useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writing or work around psychology, philosophy, and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. And that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.